Let's talk about dividing and multiplying fractions today. Really, we want to talk about dividing, but in order to divide fractions, you really just want to multiply. If that sounds confusing, just think about the first things we've done in school. From the very first weeks of sixth grade, we've said that division is multiplication, and it's the same with fractions. And you've probably noticed this along the way. You've probably noticed that something like 4 divided by 2, you know what that equals, yes? It equals 2, of course. But what I want to say is that 4 divided by 2 is the same as this multiplication problem. 4 times 1 half, right? Half of 4 is 2, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. They're really the same thing. And what this allows us to do is get rid of division and turn it into multiplication. And we do that by using the reciprocal. You probably remember that if we write 2 as a whole number, it's written like that with a denominator of 1. And if we flip it over, it becomes 1 half. We call that the reciprocal, right? The reciprocal of 2 is 1 half. That's when we flip the number over. And what that allows us to do is take division, which can sometimes be very difficult to do, and change it into multiplication, which is much easier to do. When we take that 2 and flip it over into its reciprocal, the problem becomes a multiplication problem. And that's easier to solve. Okay? So that's what we want to do. We want to get rid of all division problems and write them as multiplication problems. All right, let's start. Let's back up a minute and talk about fractions. These are the 4 rules for dividing with fractions and how to change them to multiplication problems. And the rule number 1 is that you want to change all numbers to fractions. And what I mean by that is if you have a mixed number, like 2 1/3, and it's divided by another mixed number, like 1 1/2, the first thing you want to do is change them to fractions, right? You might remember how we do that. You take your denominator and you multiply it by the whole number, right? What you're saying basically is that I have one whole number and another whole number, and we're using thirds here because that's our denominator, and I have 1/3, right? So 1, 2, and 1/3 all together makes a total of, 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7, 7/3. How we do that is we say 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 more, plus that one right there, makes a total of 7/3. And we'll do that over here with this other mixed number, right? You're saying I have a whole number. We'll write it as halves because that's our denominator here. Plus I have one more half, right? So one whole number and 1 half makes a total of 3 halves. What we do, the shortcut of course, is to multiply 2 times the whole number. That makes 2 halves, plus 1 more half, that's this one right here, makes a total of 3 halves. Now this is still a division problem. We just changed the mixed numbers to fractions. Okay, so step 1, change all mixed numbers to fractions. All whole numbers to fractions too. All numbers need to be changed to fractions when we're dividing like this with fractions. Okay, let's go on. Rule number 2. Number 2 is stay, flip, flip. The most famous one, right? So let's see, these were our numbers. Stop right there. Back up. There we go. So there's our number, 7/3 divided by 3 halves. And now comes the part where we change division into multiplication, right? So this number stays 7/3. This division sign turns into a multiplication sign. And this is where we take 3 halves and write it as its reciprocal. We flip it over into 2/3. Okay? So now we've gotten rid of the division problem. It is gone. What we have is a multiplication problem, which is much easier to deal with. All right, let's take a look at rule number 3, which is simply multiply. Multiply straight across. Right? So here is our number. Seven thirds times 2/3. And now you just need your multiplication table. So break it out. 7 times 2 is 14. And 3 times 3 is 9. We just multiplied our numerators and we multiplied our denominators. 14 ninths. Okay? it looks like we're done, right? Except for step 4, which is simplify. Always simplify, right? You never need to ask if you need to simplify. The rule is you always need to simplify, if you can. Okay? So let's take a look at what we have. We had 14 ninths. How do we do that? Well, we want to see if we can get any whole numbers out of there. And remember, a whole number, if we're talking about ninths, a whole number is 9 ninths. So if I have 14 ninths, is there enough to take 9 ninths out? Yes, of course. That equals 1 whole number. Now, is there a remainder? Is there something left over? Sure. If I had 14 of them and I take 9 away, let's do a little multiplication or subtraction here. I had 14. I took out 9 ninths. That's going to leave me with 5. So I have 5 ninths left over. Now, the way that we should be doing this, right? This down here kind of shows you what we're thinking about. We're taking out the whole number, this part right here. But that's really a division problem. What you should be saying to yourself is, okay, how many groups of 9 ninths can I take out of 14 ninths? And that's a division problem, right? 9 goes into 14, 1. I can take one group of 9 out. And what am I left with? 5. 5 what? 5 ninths, right? So division is the best way to simplify an improper fraction, right? If you are confused about what to do, though, just remember you're taking out whole numbers. And that's where the numerator and the denominator are the same. And there you go. You have simplified that problem. Hey, and also you divided 2 mixed numbers, right? Let's go back and take a look at what we had in the very beginning here, right? You divided 2 mixed numbers, and that's as hard as it gets, right? I mean, numbers could be bigger, and the multiplication could be more difficult, but that's essentially what we're doing, right? So remember these rules. Change all numbers to fractions, stay flip-flip, multiply straight across, and simplify. Always simplify. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good luck.